Hey everyone, I am Jill Wagner, and you are listening to a special edition of the Mo News podcast. It is officially the most wonderful time of the year. Or is it? During the holidays, many of us are anything but cheerful, from Thanksgiving to Diwali, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanza, and New Year's. I'm tired just thinking about it. It is enough to make us feel a bit frantic and frazzled, which is why today we are talking to Niro Feliciano, a cognitive psychotherapist and the best-selling author of This Book Won't Make You Happy, 8 Keys to Finding True Contentment. And she is out with a new book, All is Calmish, How to Feel Less Frantic and More Festive During the Holidays. And if Niro is familiar to you, it is because we have had her on this podcast before, and she is also a regular on the Today Show. Hi, Niro.
Hi, Jill.
I am so happy to have you back on, especially about this topic. So what made you write this book? Was it that you saw clients stressing about the holidays? Is it something that you yourself experienced?
All of the above. And, you know, Jill, I have 4 kids now. They're a little bit older. My oldest is 19 and my youngest is 12. But at one point, I remember having a 6, 4, 2, and 0. And in that time period, none of this was joyful. None of it was joyful. And I started habits and traditions that I felt like I had to keep up every year. And what I was sacrificing was my own ability to be present and enjoy these moments that everyone tells you flies by so fast. So there was a turning point, kind of an aha moment I had, where I said, I'm not doing it this way anymore. Nobody actually is benefiting from this. And I wrote about that in the book. But historically, you know, having been in practice now for 20 years or so, I've seen this is the hardest time of year for people. And it could be just the regular stress that is placed on top of our already busy lives, where no one has extra mental bandwidth to take more on. But really, some of the harder things that come to the surface, grief, which never goes away, especially this time of year. And if you're dealing with illness or financial stress, or just your family isn't what you thought it would be in this moment, that all hits really hard this time of year. So I thought, who doesn't need a therapist during the holidays for something? And we did the book.
So you do mention grief. This is the time of year that can bring up some sadness for people. So how should people who are navigating grief approach the holidays?
Yeah, so it is. It's so real. And what I've learned from many people who have experienced very profound grief in the last year or in their life is that you learn to live around it. It doesn't completely go away. And especially if you think about the holidays, that's the time we have memories. We think of those times with these people who are no longer here. And our heart really can feel heavy during this time. So I would say, 1, you have to make room for all of it and give yourself a lot of grace. And when I say grace, know that you can make plans, but also give yourself room to change them. If you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. Maybe you do it next year. Maybe you do things differently this year. You don't have to hold yourself to this standard. I would say if you are isolating, if you are kind of writing off being around anyone or doing anything, there is a time and place for that, but not forever. Know who your people are. Who are the people who you don't have to perform or, you know, put on a face in front of, that they have sat with you through the hardest moments in your life? Just reach out to them. Those people want to help you. They just don't always know what to do. What I've also learned is for people, anniversaries of grief, you would think they would be harder, those 1-year, 5-year, 10-year marks. But actually, they tend to be a little bit easier because you get more support during those times. People know this is the 1-year mark, 5-year mark. It's the years in between that can be hard because they go unacknowledged. So just prepare yourself for that too. But the other thing is, I know for a fact your loved one would want you to feel joy. They don't want you to carry this heaviness. And, you know, if you have those spiritual beliefs, it's easier to rely on that. But life is a series of events where we can hold joy and grief and sorrow at the same time. And I've learned that from people who've gone through some profound losses, that there's still room for joy. So I say, in experiencing that joy, you're not dishonoring your loved one. You're not letting go of your grief completely. You're just making room for all of it.
Right. So don't feel guilty for
No.
enjoying yourself a little bit.
No. And that's what they'd want for you more than anything else. They would want that for you.
I know that you live near Sandy Hook in Connecticut, and you have worked with some of those families.
Definitely. That day will always stay forever on our hearts this time of year, especially I was 15 minutes away from Sandy Hook when it happened. And I sat with many of those families. And one thing I've learned, and I'll share this story with you from one of the women who has written extensively about it. Her name is Jenny Hubbard. She lost her beautiful, fiery, red-haired daughter, Catherine Hubbard, and she has an animal sanctuary in Newtown, Connecticut. And she said, I knew that there could be joy and grief at the same time, because I remember the first time my son, who was 8 years old when he lost his sister, after the loss, had this belly laugh. You know how kids laugh? That kind of unabandoned, I have no care in the world laugh, deep laugh. And it lifted her in that moment. And she was still grieving, but she was able to step into that moment and enjoy her son's laughter. She said, I knew that you could have both. So what I say, if that woman could experience it, I think it's possible for everyone in that moment. But yeah, it's so much to learn from those survivors. And the other thing that I find is so fascinating, and I'm into signs. I don't know if anybody else is, spiritual signs, hearing from people, seeing things. You know, we see cardinals, we see rainbows, and they're timely at just the right moments, especially at these important moments in your year, birthdays, holidays. Look for those signs, because if you're open to it, you'll receive it. And those Sandy Hook parents have received so many. It's really hard to deny that it's not a thing. So read their stories. They can be really encouraging if you're going through grief.
I look for signs everywhere. And I think you're right. It's one of those things where if you look for them, you do start to see them. And that's sort of how it is with gratitude as well. If
Yes.
you go through your day thinking about things that you're thankful for, or even little things, you start to see more of those. So we have a ton of parents in our community. You mentioned you had 4 kids under the age of 6. And for parents who have young kids, I know that there could be frustration where parents are trying to make everything perfect and get the right gifts, and then they feel like their kids maybe are not appreciating it. Is there a way to navigate that?
Yes. So one, expect it. Expect it. You know, I mean, we're not perfect. We're not mind readers. Kids change what they want. I know from the beginning of the season to the end can change as well. I remember telling my kids, Santa has a cutoff date. After this time, like, he is not able to put anything else into production. I've told lies upon lies to my kids about Santa. We can get into that another time. They're going to be okay. But I would say we should understand the difference between disappointment and ingratitude. And if we think about it, even in our own life, we can be grateful and disappointed at the same time. And I know my husband could give you firsthand accounts of gifts he spent a lot of time trying to find for me. And my reaction was anything but grateful. It was disappointment. Does it mean I'm not grateful for him and the effort? No, but disappointment is a normal human emotion. So before you go to, this kid is so ungrateful, they don't appreciate, just stop for a minute and think, maybe this is just disappointment. Maybe it's disappointment, and you can validate it in that way. I can understand your disappointment, and it's okay to feel disappointed sometimes. So you can sit with that for a bit, but then, we need to start looking at all the other good things that came out of this holiday, or the other gifts that you like. We're not going to like everything all the time, and that's okay. Adults feel like that too.
So we say this is the most wonderful time of the year, and there is so much beauty, but we are all so busy that it's hard to find time to take it in. You say, take time for awe and wonder. Can you explain that a little bit? Why is that so important?
It is so important. I mean, when we're modeling that behavior for our kids, we're not just running around crazy. We're stopping, we're taking in the moments. But there's actually been a lot of research on the concept of awe. It comes out of UC Berkeley. It's led by researcher Dacher Keltner. And there are 8 categories of awe that he breaks it down into. Anything from synchronized movement, to beauty in nature, to topics of life and death. There are many of them. But during this time of year, we can understand it. We see these beautiful moments, acts of compassion, just beautiful scenes around us. And what I've found, Jill, is that we're more interested in saving it than savoring it. We take out our phone, we're looking at it through a screen. It never feels or looks as good through a screen.
Or do you go back and watch it?
Never. Do you watch the 8 minutes of your fourth grader's concert ever again? No, you don't. Even if you watch 5 seconds, that's better than I think 70% of the population. But take a moment, I always say, and make it for you. Savor it before you save it. And what happens when we do that is that awe begins to take over our body. One thing we know about awe is it lowers cortisol. We see that long-term, people who make time for awe and wonder, they have lower rates of inflammation. They have tracked a marker called the cytokine interleukin 6. It lowers in your body. So we know that long-term, that actually lends to longevity, less illness physically, stronger mental health when we take time for awe. The other thing is we know that when we make time for awe, we see an increase in oxytocin. That's our bonding hormone. We feel more connected to the people around us when we experience awe. So in that case, it's a win-win for everybody around us. And not only that, when there's an increase in oxytocin, we see a decrease in anxiety. So oxytocin becomes a protective factor for anxiety. We know emotions are a contagion. So if we genuinely feel awe, wonder, joy, the people around us are going to experience it more so than if we're just creating joy for everybody else and don't feel it ourselves.
I really love what you're saying, and not to belabor the point, but just I want to really hit on it. So do you mean, for example, if you're just say at a Christmas tree lighting with your kids, that moment where you're counting down and then the tree goes on, don't necessarily videotape it, just enjoy it and take it in? Is that kind of what you mean by that?
So what I would say is you can videotape it, right? Tape it, but then take a moment to step away from your phone and just take it in and look at it. But I'll tell you this funny story. So I'm all in my awe and wonder era right now. I'm telling everybody to do it. And I'm sitting at my kid's 6th grade concert. And the woman next to me, she doesn't have her phone up in front of her face. It's to the side. So now she's blocking my awe. I'm looking through her phone, and I'm in perimenopause. So my hormones are like 0 to 60 in terms of tolerance. My husband just looked at me and I was like, I will not say anything. I'm not going to smack the phone out of her hand. So be cognizant when you're not looking through your phone that you don't block someone else's awe. But the whole point is just take a moment and make it for you. Make it for you. And that will solidify the memory more than saving it on your phone and never going back to look at it.
Wait, so just you didn't say to this woman, your phone's in my face. I can't see my kids.
I just judged her like you would not believe in my mind, and that was enough for me. But it also reminded me, like, don't do that to people, be cognizant of where you're placing your cell phone when you're recording these things. I appreciated she wanted to experience it off her phone, but I didn't really choose to experience it through her phone.
You are a better person than I am. I would have been like, lady. You also have a chapter in your book called The 3 Ds of Holiday Conflict. We are a news outlet first and foremost, which means we cover a bunch of really controversial political topics. So walk us through what people could do. What are the 3 Ds?
Deflect is one of them. So change the subject. When something comes up, people bring up politics or their opinions on something that are really fixed. Hey, you know what? Who wants a drink? Let me go get it. You can choose to walk out of the room, change the subject. Who loved their Hanukkah gift this year? The socks that I spent so much time picking out, whatever it might be. Depersonalize. Know that whatever it is probably bigger than you. If someone is not someone to respect or read the room, that's probably been ongoing since before you were in the picture. So even though it's coming at you, it probably isn't about you. I like to ask, okay, what happened in this person's life that made them think that this behavior was appropriate or okay? And when we can zoom out a little, it's easier to depersonalize that situation. And the other thing is declare. And I say it like declare, because we can set boundaries where we still hold on to some of the control and power. So you can even reach out to some of these people before and say, hey, we all want this to be a really peaceful holiday. But if this topic comes up, if you talk about my daughter who's single and she's 45, we're not going to be able to gather like this anymore. And we're not asking, we're not saying don't talk about it. We're declaring it. This is what's going to happen. There's a cause and effect. There's a consequence to this. And that way we hold on to some of the power in the situation.
You mean that, are you dating anyone? You're not married yet?
Or when are you having a baby? Not realizing that that person's been struggling with infertility for 8 years, those kind of things. And if there's potential for that, it's always good to reach out, knowing that some people are not going to respect boundaries anyway. And in those situations, we still have choices. We can choose to respond instead of react. We can take those longer exhalation breaths to take us out of fight or flight, go take a walk in the cold, whatever it does to reset our nervous system, or just another D is drift, walk away from the situation. Don't get caught up in it.
So as we look to not just survive the holidays, but actually enjoy them, any tips for people who take on too much?
I mean, one, we want to be present. We want to experience this holiday, but realistically, with everything that's put on us, and like I said, most of us don't have extra mental bandwidth as it is, let alone adding to that list this time of year. Pick the 3 things that make the holiday really meaningful to you and identify those things. Show up really present in those moments. None of us are going to be present all the time. I always say like 30, 40%, that's a win. That's a win. That's why the book is called Calm-ish, because that is pretty much my baseline normal. I'm not going to be calm all the time, especially when realistically there's so much to do. So pick those 3 things and then think about, okay, what do I have to say no to so that I actually will have the energy to show up to these things? If we want to say yes to things, I love that Shonda Rhimes wrote a book, The Year of Yes. And I remember when I saw that book, my first thought was, in order to have a year of yes, you have to have a year of no. Because your time is a limited commodity. If we want to say yes to those things, what are the things we have to say no to? Jill, for the first time in 22 years, I'm not sending Christmas cards. Like, Christmas cards were my thing, the holiday card. I'm not doing it. It is the most freeing thing that I have ever decided to do, not to do them. And I encourage people, not necessarily that decision, but what's the thing you can let go of this year that would preserve your time and energy and peace? And why I say that is because of social media, we're inundated with new ideas for the holidays, right? Every year, oh, that looks great. Let me do that. Let me try that. So we're accumulating these traditions, but we're not letting go of other things that we've been doing. We have to ask ourselves, what's going to serve our family this year? What are we actually going to enjoy this year? And I encourage people to ask family members that as well. I ask my kids every year, what makes the holiday meaningful to you? What makes this special? What do you really enjoy? What do you want to make sure that we do? Because you'd be surprised. Sometimes there's simpler things than you would think. For my kids, they're like, we love the holiday movie night in PJs. Very little effort.
Now they tell you.
Now they tell us. I'm like, okay, thanks for the last 19 years of parenting when I was just killing myself. But now we'll just throw on a movie, So ask them those questions and then pick accordingly. And know that if you don't get to it this year and you really miss it, you can always bring it back next year.
I'm so glad you just said that about social media, because I have been inundated with Hanukkah ideas. Sure. And my father is famous for fruit salads. Like, that's his go-to thing. And he takes so much pride in them. I happened to see somebody make a menorah-shaped fruit salad where each candle was a fruit. So I said to my dad, are you making a fruit salad, for I'm having a Hanukkah party? And he's like, yeah, I am. I said, all right, I'm going to send you this video of this menorah. And you know what? Why? Let him make his fruit salad. Why am I imposing this weird thing that I saw on social media for my dad, who has this? He has his system down.
What did he say?
He was like, okay, yeah. I think he was trying to be a good sport. I mean, we had this conversation, I swear, about an hour before we're recording this podcast. But as you say it, why am I now putting my social media pressure onto my dad?
I know. Well, it was the thought, it was cool, something different, but I can just imagine your dad trying to navigate.
He's
Okay,
like,
how do I
huh?
make this?
Okay, yeah, sure. Sounds interesting. What impact do you think, just on the topic of social media, that social media has? Because as you said, everybody has ideas. And of course, social media is this idyllic perspective of people's lives.
Right. It's so multifactorial on so many levels. And we have gotten into a conversation on this. So I wrote a little bit about this in All Is Calm-ish, but a lot about it in my first book, This Boat Won't Make You Happy, which is about contentment, finding contentment in this life. I think it's big on two levels. One, just the comparison. We're constantly looking at people's curated, highlighted moments and comparing it to the real life every day that we know our life is. And it leaves us with this feeling of discontent often. And especially for young people. If that is not your issue with social media, then it's like flight of ideas, as we say in the therapy world, right? Like, how many of these can we do? And how many can we fit in the short period of time? And they're doing this, and that makes the holiday magical. So now I need to do this to make my holiday magical, right? All these things happen very quickly as automatic thoughts as we're taking it in. But the more significant, scarier effect of social media is it manipulates our dopamine circuits, right? So when we're tired, when we're spent, when we're tapped out or crashing out, as the kids say, we tend to use it more because it's that dopamine, that instant hit of dopamine. It's entertaining, it's mindless. But that now we're seeing, and I talk about this in the book in the dopamine deficit section of my book, it prevents us from feeling joy. Because when we are used to those high hits of dopamine consistently, our body, who wants to maintain homeostasis, will drop our need for dopamine low, and we get into that deficit. And then it becomes difficult to experience joy. The normal things that are supposed to help us experience joy, connection, a walk in nature, those normal physiological levels of dopamine that we receive don't feel like enough. So this is really a mood issue. If we want to feel joy this time of year, limiting our screen use is really a big piece of that. And Jill, for years when I've worked with patients, literally the last 15 years, I used to have people go on a social media fast for 7 days if they were coming in with anxiety and depression. And for years before the research came out, I thought every single one of those people, I've not had one in now I've been practicing for 20 years, who has not come back saying, I feel better. I thought it was because of comparison. What I didn't realize is it was because it was a dopamine reset that was happening from that constant stimulation. So it's a thing.
Wait, that's so interesting. So a 7-day social media fast?
Yeah. With young people, I get them to buy in to like a 2-day. And then a limited amount of social media. So we get the phones out of their room at night so they don't wake up or go to bed scrolling. But even they say their focus is better, their attention is better. And all of this has to do with the neurochemistry wiring that gets manipulated when we're on screens extended period of time. And know that I struggle with this too. Anyone who's on social media professionally, I will guarantee you, unless their boundaries are rock solid, they're constantly fighting this, right? Because when we want a mindless hit of dopamine, we go to it too. So it's something that always we have to keep in check, and getting the phone out of proximity is one of the best ways to do it. Having phone-free, screen-free family times during holidays is really important, whether it's a meal or, the movie night, something like that.
I think I have my New Year's resolution, or at least one of them, which will be some type of social media fast or cleanse, or however you want to word it. But speaking of New Year's, which we're quickly approaching, and depending on when somebody decides to listen to this podcast, we might already be in 2026. I know your book is obviously about the chaos and craziness of the holiday season, but is there anything that you think people could really take with them just into regular life?
Honestly, all of it. And that's been the largest amount of feedback I've received from the book. And people have said, this is not something that I want to stop during the holidays. I want to carry these practices out into my entire life. And what's good about this book, and I was very mindful about writing a book that I'm telling people will help them stay calm while asking them to read a book at the busiest time of year.
Right.
Like it's not very intuitive.
I have something
right?
else for your to-do list.
That's right. Here, read this whole book. It's written in 31 very short chapters. They're 5-minute reads, like a day. So it's a more palatable book, even during our busy life. But I would say, yes, there are practices that you carry all through the year. I mean, we talk about gratitude. We talk about self-compassion. We talk about setting boundaries and what is actually meaningful to you in your life. And how do you guard that? How do you protect your joy? Those kind of things in this book. There are a lot of holiday funny stories, from Christmas to Hanukkah. But some of it, if you're just in that stage of life that's busy, you're raising kids, I've had 80-year-old readers write me and say, this changed my life at this point. And that was something I didn't expect. So I do think there's wisdom in it for the whole year. But coming up on New Year's, what I'll say, because you said resolution, I write about the difference between intentions and resolution and how even in the resolutions, we have to give ourselves more grace. And my new mantra for New Year is anything worth doing is worth doing a little. So if we can't do the 7-day social media fast, do the 2-day. Let's just get started on those things that we want to change our habits on. And cumulatively, those things add up to a life of good practices. So start small.
I think that's great advice for any resolution, any diet, right? If you don't want to do it all day, maybe make your breakfast healthy, or if you can't work out however many days you want a week, even work out a little bit.
That's right. Just add one vegetable a day, right? Add one more vegetable a day to your diet before you go up and cleanse it all out.
All great advice. I did want to get your professional take on this question. If you have young kids, and I know some kids celebrate Hanukkah, some celebrate Christmas, maybe some celebrate both, some do nothing or something else. For those who are comparing themselves, we don't get, maybe it's much, they get 8 nights of presents. Why don't we? Or, oh my gosh, their house is decorated and for Christmas lights and Santa comes and we don't get that. Any advice on how to talk to kids about the different holidays?
Setting the precedent early on that not everything is equal and not everything is fair is really important for kids. And I can tell you with 4 children, and years have gone by where my kids have looked at families that have 1 or 2 kids and said, well, this is what they do. They've learned that 4 kids is very different than 2 kids. So there is an inequity that is part of life, and we want to normalize that. So I think part of it is teaching your kids gratitude for what they have. We do this practice in my house where at first my kids would make fun of me for it. When we'd be around the table, I'd say, give me 3 good things. That's what I say. And my newsletter that I write is called 3 Good Things.
I love your newsletter, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So, thank you so much.
Really quickly, could you just give that a shout? How could somebody sign up for it?
Yeah, go to my website, NiroFeliciano.com.
Okay, and I'll link to it in the show notes too.
Thank you so much. And it's just, give me 3 good things that happened in your day. And now when they're teenagers, my kids, and we go out to dinner, one of them will bring it up. I mean, half joking and making fun of me, but they'll be like, give me your 3 good things in today. But again, like you said before earlier on, it trains your brain to look for the good. And because of what's called the negativity bias that we've developed through evolution, our brain normally goes to the things that aren't so good and unfair. That was like a protective mechanism. So seeing kids compare is actually a normal part of their psychological development. It's called a heuristic. And we want to bring them back to, okay, our family is unique in some ways, and we have advantages that people don't have. And there are other families that you might think have advantages that we don't have, but every family does what is right and best for them. And teaching them that in little ways, pointing out the ways that you have your blessings or advantages or privileges is really important. And also understanding the very real constraints that families have, especially this time of year, and making them aware of that. But, a lot of times I hear from parents, I just want to make everything fair and equal. And I understand where that's coming from, especially when you're trying to do it for your kids. But hey, when your kids get older and one kid asks for a gift that costs $200, and it's about 5 inches wide, it's not going to be equal. We're setting them up with this precedent that is not going to serve them in life if we're trying to convey to them that everything is fair and equal. So I say start that early.
I love that. And this is, I guess, partly my therapy session because my daughter recently asked me, she's having some Christmas envy because we celebrate Hanukkah.
Right.
She was like, I want to celebrate Christmas and it's not fair. And I said, listen, Christmas actually seems pretty great. I don't know what to tell you. I kind of wish I celebrated it also. I don't want to compare the holidays, obviously, but I'm like, it is kind of a bummer we don't get Christmas. And I feel better that I said that because maybe that's the right answer.
No, it's the perfect answer because one thing, you didn't try and talk her out of her emotions. She feels that very deeply, right? And it's hard not to. I mean, I have very close friends who are Jewish and we talk about this often. And you normalized it and you said, hey, you know what? I feel that way too. That's okay. Because as soon as we deny that emotion, they're actually going to feel it stronger. You help them resolve it when you can say, I'm going to tell you that it's okay. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. And then, hey, how can we make Hanukkah really special for us? Let's talk about those ways. My psychology partner, my colleague who I run my practice with, she said for years she wanted a tree. She wanted a tree and her husband does not come from that tradition and he felt awkward about it. And finally, and her kids are as old as mine. She has kids in college. She said, we are doing a Hanukkah tree. She put one up. It is gorgeous. It is very Hanukkah. It just looks like, it's a tree. And it satisfied part of the longing that she had while honoring her tradition. So sometimes we have to think out of the box, like what's right for our family? What would make this special and unique for us? And explore that conversation.
I love that. And I will spill the beans here on the podcast because I know my daughter's not going to listen, but I did buy like a 5-foot tall snowman that's holding a dreidel. And I'm going to blow it up for our Hanukkah party just to give her a little bit of that awe as you talk about.
I love that.
So I will take some pictures and I'll post them on social media, not for anyone to be jealous, but just to share some joy. And before we go, I would love to know, Niro, your favorite holiday tradition.
I do love our movie nights now. I do because it's still and it's calm and we're all together. And now with my kids starting to leave home, I appreciate so differently having them all under one roof. It's become very special. But I'll tell you something that started while I was writing the book and now has continued into my everyday life. I have a chapter called A Silent Morning, playing on Not a Silent Night. And I sit in the morning with my coffee. I turn on all my Christmas lights in the room, my tree, my wreath, everything that's there. And I sit there with a candle and my coffee and I just have a moment of stillness. And I take in the awe and the beauty of what that room looks like because I'm the only one that decorated it, so I'm going to enjoy it. No one helped me to do it. And I've carried that moment into my everyday. And it may be without the Christmas lights, but I still have my candle. I have my coffee. I do my little meditation and my prayer and sometimes a little gratitude journaling in that moment. But it's extra special during the holidays. So I would say that is a moment for me. That's my awe moment. And I encourage everyone to find a moment for them in this season, whatever that looks like, and make it a part of their new holiday tradition.
All right. Well, Niro, happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for the wisdom. I know that I definitely benefited from this conversation, and I'm sure that our listeners will as well.
Well, happy holidays to you. I always love talking to you, and I want a text with that snowman photo, personally.
I did go a little nuts this year. All right.
Good mama.
Thanks, Niro. And that was Niro Feliciano, author of the new book, All is Calmish, How to Feel Less Frantic and More Festive During the Holidays. And I will link to all things Niro, including the book, in our show notes.